You have just heard a recital by one to whom the mother in our ashram gave the role of angel of music. She came to the ashram when she was hardly 17 and has been there for over 32 years, receiving her education, spiritual and cultural, at the ashram. The music, however, is her own. Indian music seeks to capture the world rhythms corresponding to the 7 worlds. There are 7 notes corresponding to the 7 principles of existence and the 7 worlds based upon them. There are different centers in the human body from where these notes arise, and it is a yoga by itself to develop a synchronization of these notes. And music in India is not looked upon as a means of entertainment, but as a means of pursuit of the reality in the form of sound. The mother herself was a great musician, one who played till she was about 80 or 85, having started early in France when she was about 14 or 15. Her fingers were so deft and her being was so musical that great musicians like Beethoven, Wagner and others, their melodies from the subtle physical world would flow through her fingers, and unknown to her, Indian melodies would also flow. She encouraged a new movement in art, in music, in dance, and in aesthetic pursuits as part of her scheme for the manifestation of God in life. She herself was born 100 years ago in Paris to parents of part Egyptian, part Turk lineage. Born to affluent parents, she was, however, a very self-willed child, not given to play and external activities as children of that age are. Her mother, a French woman, a very conservative type, who didn't believe in God, who considered herself a communist, saw something unusual in her daughter and had a small chair prepared where the girl would sit for hours together. She was serious, and once her mother asked her, "Why do you sit with such a serious face, as if the whole weight of the world is weighing upon you?" She simply answered, "It does." And at the age of 5, she became conscious of a light over her head. And she said that her child brain could not understand what that light was. It was a continuous, luminous light. But she felt this is God. And she once told me that since that moment, when she was 5, she never did a thing in her life without reference to that. She would not go to school, she would not study. But one day, when she and her brother, who later became the Governor General of French Equatorial Africa, a great administrator, when they were going in the streets of Paris, she saw a board on a door and she asked her brother, "What does it say?" He took the opportunity and said, "Why don't you read yourself?" He said, "But you know that I don't know to read. Why don't you learn?" And that was the beginning of her learning the alphabet, joining the school, and gradually distinguishing herself not only in studies, but in music, in art, and leadership. When she was about 11 or 12, she started becoming conscious of a number of occult and spiritual teachers, some of whom she later came to meet on earth, appeared to her in sleep and instructed her how to build her inner life. And one of those who was coming more frequently than others, she was a dark figure, darkish complexion. She was led to call Krishna, an Indian name of a god, though she did not very much know at that time of India and Indian names. She, an artist that she was, she sketched out an impression of the face and kept it with her. When she was about 13, for months, she had a same identical experience the moment she closed her eyes and went to sleep. She would find herself rising in the sky, and she had a golden robe which would go on extending and cover the entire town where she lived, and she would be in the sky. And a number of people, children, women, men, in distress, in suffering, would come and tell their tale of woe. And as they spoke, the robe would lengthen itself and touch them, and they would go back healed. This continued for a number of months. And she says that compared to this experience, the day's activities looked to her very uninteresting and drab. She felt one of the missions of her life was to carry succor to the distressed, heal the wounds, help ameliorate the pain and suffering. And she worked in herself. But she came to an impasse where she did not know how to proceed further. She did arrive by this time, when she was about 18, at a constant communion with the divinity in herself. But further, she did not know how to proceed. It was at that time that an old Indian resident of France presented her with an imperfect French translation of the Bhagavad Gita and told her, regard Lord Krishna as the indwelling deity and surrender yourself to her. She says she took the book home, the Gita, and she was amazed that there could be a book on earth which could give such explicit directions to go inward and to find God. A little later, a copy of Vivekananda's lectures in America on Raja Yoga came in her hands, and she says, within 1 month, the whole work was done. She found her spiritual center. She knew how to relate herself and her life to it. And a little later, she came across a remarkable couple, a Polish occultist called Max Thion and his English wife from the Isle of Wight. Both had remarkable capacities in the occult science, probing the secrets of nature, acquiring control, and they were trying to get to the secret of life. When they met the mother, at that time she was not the mother, she was called Mira Alfasa, they found her remarkably developed because she had her own out-of-body experiences. She could leave her body, go out and carry out certain tasks, self-imposed, self-directed tasks. And she went with him to Algeria to learn something more than what she knew. She found that his wife was more developed than himself. She took a fancy to this girl, taught her many things, and the mother describes how when she went with her for a walk, they would find in the forests particular flowers so fragrant, and she would like them. She would express how beautiful these flowers are. And when she came back to her room, mother would find bouquets of those flowers neatly arranged on her table. All the while, that lady and she would be together. And Madame Thion had a way of nourishing herself. Once she was so tired as a result of these practices that she just lay down and asked Mira to get a grapefruit. They are big grapefruits. She kept that fruit on her abdomen and closed her eyes and told this girl, come after an hour. When she went back after an hour, she says the whole big grapefruit had become like a pancake, and her face was glowing with energy, life. That was her technique of drawing nourishment, life energy, without eating food. And this lady could leave her body successively nearly 12 or 13 times and arrive at the thinnest embodiment of the soul. She taught that art to the mother, who practiced it. And one day, when she was in the subtlest form, she found the secret of life. Now, what is that secret? It can't be described in our human language. This guide, Max Thion, he was protecting her because when she had gone, there was only the thin silvery cord connecting her with the physical. So he was guarding, protecting, so that no harm should come. And when she found the secret, he knew here. And he asked her what was it. But she felt an imperative from within not to reveal it. And she did not reveal. So she studied, and when they were on their way back to France, by boat, at that time there were no planes, there was a huge storm. All the people in the deck came down, the boat was rocking, and the captain himself said, we are in danger. At that time, Theo called Mira and told her, go and stop it. She went up the deck alone. She found all waves enveloping the boat, left her physical body, and in her subtle form, when she went into that region, inhabited by these elements and beings which cause all these natural movements like rain, winds and storm, she found them absolutely excited and enjoying the whole thing. They wanted an accident to take place. So she pleaded with them. She said, what is it? So many people are in danger. And she imposed her will, and they withdrew. The things became calm, and they had a safe journey home. These are certain typical instances in her life. And no wonder, she became a leader of a salon, that is a unit, a kind of a refined meeting place, club, where thinkers, artists, revolutionaries who were just coming from Tsarist Russia, they all gathered. All had felt a new world is round the corner. The old world is dying. But what is that new world? What are the things that are standing in the way? And they were having meetings, regular meetings, under her guidance. It was at that time that some of the young people who were with the mother, they told her, we too would have liked to pursue the quest of the reality exclusively like you, but we are burdened with our responsibilities to our wives, children, society. We have to earn our bread. At that time, she said, she felt that if somehow a life could be organized, freeing man from the necessity of having to devote his energies to earn his creature comforts? Perhaps. Man's energies would go towards the divine, and something substantial could be done. And she said that she got this opportunity in answer to her prayer somewhere in the middle of her life when she came to India. Her coming to India was very under interesting circumstances. Her husband, who was a politician, he wanted to get elected to the French Senate. So he came to India because French India was entitled to vote for the Senate. And when he came, he asked, at the instance of his wife, who had told him, see if there are still any wise men in India of whom we hear. So he asked, and Sri Aurobindo had just withdrawn from his political revolutionary activity and had retired to spiritual pursuits. He was Paul Richard, he was taken to him, and he talked. And he showed to Sri Aurobindo a picture of a lotus which was appearing constantly before the mother. And he asked, what is its significance? Sri Aurobindo told him that the lotus represents a consciousness blossoming to the touch of a ray from the Sun of Truth. When he went and gave this reply to the mother, she decided that she must see this person. And 4 years afterwards, when he had to come again on a political mission, she accompanied. And as the train in which she was arriving to Pondicherry, where Sri Aurobindo lived, was about 6 or 7 miles, she saw a great column of light shooting upwards from the center of the town. She had that indication that here is the person with whom I have to work. That day she met Sri Aurobindo, and she says, she saw the face exactly as it was when she had drawn, when she was 14 years of age, that impression, that sketch. And she brought it later on. She found his ideal, his philosophy was substantially the same as the one that she was having. That is, faculties which are not yet part of man have got to be invoked and established in man. A truth consciousness has to be made active. The pattern of life has to change under the pressure of this truth force. An individual perfection must be related to a collective perfection. And this collective perfection is to be the kingdom of God on earth. Life is intended for perfection, perfection of all the faculties. Our life represents a scene of growing evolution of consciousness. So when she found that both had the same ideal, it was natural that both decided to work together for a new era in humanity, giving a fresh orientation to spiritual traditions which had been till then all over the world otherworldly. Sri Aurobindo and the mother are among the pioneers of the modern spiritual thrust towards claiming the earth for God, revealing God here on earth and in man. And gave the metaphysics, Sri Aurobindo gave the metaphysic of life divine. He not only gave the philosophy, but worked out the path called the yoga of self-perfection, combining in itself the best elements of all the past yogas, plus a new direction, a new dimension of human nature, transforming itself into a divine nature. The mind being replaced by supermind. But the First World War broke out in 1914. Mother's husband had been conscripted according to French military rules. She had to come back, and she returned in 1920. It was in 1926 when, after a major spiritual experience, Sri Aurobindo withdrew from public life entirely, that she was asked to take charge of his devotees, disciples, and organize the collective life around. There were about 20 people or 25 people at that time, and she started organizing what is called the ashram. Ashram is the house of the teacher, house of the guru, where the disciples are received and given training in the life of the guru's conception. She opened the doors to every seeker who was prepared to cut off from the old moorings and take a plunge into this new adventure of consciousness. And over 50 years, she developed this ashram, till when she left the body when she was 95, the ashram had more than 1,700 people. She looked upon education as the most effective means of reaching the new light, the new consciousness, the new thinking to the generality. So she started an international center of education, where education was given on these principles of world unity, oneness of human race, capability of man to rise and transform himself into Godhood, and not only to realize God, but to manifest God and what God means in day-to-day life. She was a perfect artist in life, and she gave absolute importance to the minutest detail. She insisted that all the aesthetic sense and sensibilities must be expressed as part of spiritual life. The kitchen, the study room, the gardens, everywhere it had to be an outpouring of consciousness. And she was greatly sensitive to the communication from flowers, from plants, from animals. And she asked all of us to develop our consciousness and points of contact with the universe around. She raised the status of women, a thing, something new in India, gave them perfect equality. And that was the first ashram in India where a lady was accepted as a spiritual teacher. Otherwise, it was always taken for granted that a good spiritual teacher has to be a man, and a woman would be his follower. But she was a teacher in her own right. She was not a disciple of Sri Aurobindo. Even outside she would have been a world teacher. She had that unique combination of spiritual consciousness and occult power, which has no parallel as far as I know in human history. She said that spiritual consciousness without occult power is important, and occult power without spiritual consciousness is blind. There has to be a combination. The fact that occult science, occult knowledge has been debased in some quarters is no valid reason for looking askance at occultism. Occultism is the art and the science of knowing, probing and controlling the secret powers of nature. The present physical scientists have probed the physical secrets, but there are other secrets. And Western science today is forced by the rush of events to break its frontiers. Psychology is now parapsychology, and it will have to be still more extensions. They can no more dismiss phenomena like telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance, clairaudience, prevision. They can't be denied. I was telling a friend here today how there are two remarkable books which have come in England by Colin Wilson. Colin Wilson. First book, Occultism. Second, The Mysteries. Where he is a very young man, extraordinary insight, openness. He deals scientifically in a rational way with all these phenomena of ghosts and spirits and ghouls, of dowsing, prevision, telepathy, and all these whole family of paranormal phenomena. He leaves the reader to draw his conclusions, but he gives the data, fully documented. It is books like this that are going to extend the frontiers of our knowledge, which today insists on being confined to physical senses, physical proofs. I have anger, I have love. What is the physical proof that I am going to give you? You accept that I feel that love. Some of those of you who are sensitive can feel those waves, but how am I going to prove physically that there is that love? Similarly, in the cosmos, there are areas, there are regions, domains of experience which cannot be physically, tangibly proved, but they are true. The mother used to leave her body at night, go round, see the individual requirements of each person who was doing yoga under her guidance, do the needful. She would always answer calls from those who needed help all over the world. Particularly during the Second World War, it was a most difficult time. When the adversary, through Hitler, Stalin, threatened to engulf the entire human civilization, she worked along with Sri Aurobindo to put her entire spiritual resources at the back of the Allies to win the war. Many mystics have played a part in the victory of the Allies of the Second World War. And their mothers and Sri Aurobindo's services are not inconsiderable. Having satisfied herself over 50 years of experience that it is possible for man to strike out a new line of development, forge a new pattern of collective living, freed from the domination of money economy, competition, rivalry, possible to work without economic consideration. She started an extension of the ashram experiment in Oroville, of which I spoke the other day, where she has invited about 50,000 people from all over the world to settle and help in building a prototype of a city of a new age, a planetary city, where she says men can live without barriers of race, caste or class, where man will utilize his aggressive instincts not against his neighbors but to conquer obstructions in his own nature, where opportunities to participate in art, music, culture will not be limited to people of means but will be open to people who have the necessary taste for it, where children will be educated, given an education not removed from the soul but consistent with the demands of the soul, where men and women would live in perfect equality, forgetting that they are men and women, where affection, love will not be limited to blood ties but will be extended progressively to embrace the whole human race. The experiment is on. About 500 people have gathered. But she left her physical body when she was 95. When she had received in her body, I say this from personal testimony, the supramental light, the Gnostic consciousness, the highest consciousness that has been imbibed by a human being on earth so far, where it is absolute unerring truth consciousness with a self-effectuating will, opening the doors for a complete transformation of the human body down to the last cell, so that the body transfers its allegiance from death to immortality. She was working upon the cells, groups of cells in her body, withdrawing herself from external activity with that consciousness, with that force of supramental consciousness, and converting them to accept the new law of continuous progress without decay. At present, the physical cells obey a law of birth, growth, decay. But it is only by habit, she said. A new law can be imposed, but it must be accepted. So she would work upon the cells, and each time a cell refused, she would have intense pain in the physical body. But she would persist, and the moment a cell or a group of cells accepted to change, there would be intense bliss. So she was working upon this human transformation, a theme which is being pursued at different ends, even in America, particularly in California, where they are trying to find out how the body can be transformed through sport and physical activities. Her approach was, you can't transform the body from the physical end. It is the consciousness that is housed in a body that can determine how long the body can live. The sense of immortality has to be first established in the consciousness and then communicated to the cells. She had done that, and she was in the process of working upon the cells when she aged 95 and the body broke down, and she chose to leave the physical body, leaving this experiment in human transformation at a particular point, to be resumed later by someone whom the divine chooses. Recently, there was the centenary of her birth, 1978, which was gratefully celebrated all over India and some parts of the world where her influence had touched. She was one who took the responsibility of a guru in such a way that she said, she declared, whomsoever I see, even for a fraction of a second, I hold myself responsible for his spiritual and other welfare, not only in this birth, but in all births to come. And we have repeated experience of her working, of her presence. She did not believe in formal initiation. She said, whoever accepts us is accepted by us. Anyone who thought of her or thinks of her as the Divine Mother or as his teacher is automatically accepted by her and gets her help. She knew pathways in spirituality. In India, normally, we associate spiritual life with a certain seriousness. Humor, wit, jokes, lightness are no part of life. But she introduced them. She was always smiling, always joking, always tapping the light side of things to make things cheerful. And she emphasized that there is a psychic being, the soul in evolution, which has first to be tapped. That is the source of all cheerfulness, joy and brightness. That has to be the foundation of all spiritual development. And her smile, her voice always made an impact, and it opened the windows of the soul on most of the people who came to her. Thousands and thousands have come to Pondicherry to see her, and she said, nobody comes here, everybody is called. She was so sensitive of her responsibility that if she found herself, by the way, till she was 80, she never had a bed. She never slept. For 2 hours or 3 hours, after 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock at night, till 4 or maximum 4:30, she would rest in a relaxing chair till she was 80. And she said, if at any time she found herself in that divine bliss, forgetful of everything, which was natural to her consciousness, she would suddenly feel guilty when the rest of the world is still suffering so much of pain. She felt it guilty to enjoy that bliss. And she would come out, busy herself with activities. And she gave the same attention to children, grown-ups, lunatics, philosophers, because she said, from a certain angle, from a certain level, all are same. Discouraged philosophical speculation, discussion, but called for practice, constant practice, and an effort at translating what one knows, one feels, one experiences inside in day-to-day life. She brought God to the door of the common man. Any questions?
It's almost a trifling question after what you've just said, but what's the difference between a mystic and an occultist?
Yeah. What is the difference between a mystic and an occultist? A mystic is one who is open to experiences of God which cannot be subjected to the scrutiny of reason. His experience is supernormal, they are beyond logical reasoning. He may be an occultist who has knowledge and an experience of the occult side of life, or he need not be. A mystic is more spiritual than occult. A poet can be a mystic. An artist can be a mystic. Once he enters into a realm of experience, of vision, impacts, which can't be analyzed by the mind, he is a mystic. I think it is 11:30, and I think we should conclude our sessions with 10 minutes of meditation, a kind of conducted meditation. You may sit erect, close your eyes, and conceive of a vast belt of silence over your head. Whether we are aware of it or not, there is a zone of silence overseeing each one of us. And when we are collectively gathered, the pressure of that silence, peace, is unmistakable. Just allow that silence to take hold of you. You don't try to catch it. Just relax into that silence, allowing it to enfold you gently, and stay quiet.